Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Get Wealth Podcast. I'm Brennan Wiersma. Today I have Nick Lamanga. Sorry, mixed the words up there. He's a real estate investor. I came across you on Instagram. It's been the best tool for me to reach out to other investors and network. So I appreciate you getting back to me. I'm looking forward to the conversation. So appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate the invite. Happy to talk to you.
Cool. So let's just start off with a background about yourself. Kind of when did you start to get into real estate? Because I saw on your Instagram, it shows you're a real estate investor. Is there anything else you do, and kind of just your background?
Sure. So I started in about 2005, 2006, around there. I was going to a lot of classes, taking a lot of seminars. And then in that time, I decided I wanted to be an air marshal. So I started looking into doing a lot of counterterrorism stuff, law enforcement stuff, FBI, DEA, got my degree in criminal justice, and then started doing construction while I was waiting to go into one of those academies. Wound up getting a pretty serious hand injury that wound up making me ineligible for any of the law enforcement stuff. And so while I was healing from that, my mom started following me around with the Rich Dad Poor Dad book. I wound up reading that, realizing how much money there was to be made in real estate so that you could start with no money, no credit, which I didn't have any of at the time. And just kind of went in and started swinging the bat and going after deals. I had a bit of a sense of urgency to create something for myself, since I felt like everything I had that was my security blanket was really kind of taken away. So I went full time in real estate right from the beginning while I was out trying to heal from my hand, and really never looked back.
Wow. So what does your real estate business look like today? What has that grown to?
So today, I just had this conversation earlier. I would say my biggest issue is that I'm not focused on one thing. I keep trying to, but I keep having opportunities that come up in other ones. So right now we're doing single family creative deals. Like we're closing Tuesday on a subject too that's a really cool deal that we were going to sell and just decided to hold as part of our portfolio. We just put 8.5 acres with an entitled project development out here in the Chicago suburbs on the market for almost $1 million out here. I just wholetailed another property a little while ago. I've been wholesaling multifamily mobile home parks. I sold off about 100 units last year. So I get all kind from not being specific about deals, just being open to everything and whoever I talk to for the last like 15 years. I always have like different opportunities that come on. And as much as I say, like, I want to focus just on multifamily, or I don't want to do single family, or I want to just flip, things come up and then you see an opportunity, and I really stink at turning opportunities down. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag of nuts between residential and commercial. The only thing we're really not doing is I haven't been doing any like retail or office or any stuff like that. It's mostly multifamily, mobile home park, and single family residential.
Got it. Yeah, that's cool. You bring that up. I think a lot of people can get stuck in just the one thing. Like, for example, wholesaling. If all you do is wholesale and you don't have any other ways to solve the seller's problems, that can kind of put you in a box a little bit. What did you start off doing? Was it wholesaling? That seems like usually where most people are.
I wish I had. I did it a little bit different, and it's always interesting to me because I paid people and I paid mentors when I first started out, because again, I had the hand injury and I realized how important it was to just fast track everything. And I didn't want to play games. I would call them black belts. I always want to find a black belt whenever I do, because they've already made the mistakes and they could show me how not to take those beatings. So my mentality at the time was every deal, and people who are listening to this that are starting out probably can relate to this. You get your first deal accepted and you think it's the only deal you're ever going to get. So if you have something now, you're trying to figure out every way to make it work, even though it might not. You're getting emotional about it. So I started thinking like every deal was the last deal, and I wound up getting a bunch because you're putting out so many offers, and you're getting rejected. And then, like my buddy always says, it's like a bag of popcorn. You hear the first one pop, and then you're like, oh, and then all of a sudden 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's very feast or famine. So I got a bunch after I hadn't gotten any, and I was like, I want to keep all of these, but I didn't have any money. I didn't have any credit. I didn't have an experience, and I was out on disability because of my hands. So lenders were extremely anti me at the time. So what I wound up doing is finding just traditional hard money lenders that said, look, if you can find a way to put this together as a team, not just on you, here's what we can do. We can approve you for like 250 grand based on these terms, these points, this interest. So I found people that had like a W-2 job that could show consistency of income and proof of work, and then had decent enough credit that they could get approved for that. And we started an LLC together, and I basically made a side deal with them. And then our LLC got approved for a line of credit with these hard money lenders. So I had the experience with the trainings I was taking for finding these deals and analyzing these deals. And I basically just leveraged other people's credit and got into, at the time, what was BRRRR properties. So you buy them, you rehab them, you rent them, and then you refinance them out. But it was literally like the worst time to get into real estate because things were falling apart, and people who almost similar to the way it just happened with the pandemic, that a lot of people had theories of what was going to happen, but there really hadn't been a time in the market to actually show this exact thing. So nobody really had a track record to see what was going to happen. They just had guesses. So people that were really smart were giving advice that didn't pan out, not because they, you're just, again, using your best guess. So as we're trying to pull money out of these properties, what's happening is now the banks are going, we're going to increase the lending guidelines, because when people are scared of real estate, the lenders tighten up. So they started saying, look, we know that the hard money lender gave you this loan based on you having no money, no credit, no income, but the bank does. So we're not going to let you pull out as much money, and we're not going to let you get money back at closing, and we're not going to let you, pull as much out as the LTV. So they started making things tighter on me, which made it harder to pull the cash out. So what I wound up doing initially was like, I'd get those deals. And then I was doing deals in Vegas where you could tie them up under contract. You could get the seller to agree to give you back money at closing. So I get money back at closing when I bought the property. I'd use that to fund the gap on the hard money rehabs we were doing, fix those up, and then do like a rate and term refinance on those. And then that started to dry up. So my mentor at the time, I called him and I was like, hey, I got another property under contract. I want to take it down. And he was like, man, you keep pulling these properties and keeping them. Like, I don't think you should do that. You need cash right now. Your rehabs are sucking up all your money. You're having problems with the refinance. Wholesale these properties and take the quick nickel instead of the slow dime. So I did it literally to prove him wrong. And I was like, I don't want to do that. And he said, literally, if you keep calling me and not taking my advice, stop calling me. So I was like, all right, I'm going to show this guy that his idea sucks, which is crazy because I paid him like $40,000 to give me this advice. And then my goal was to prove him wrong, which is just so stupid. But at the time, it made sense. So I went and I literally took this other property and I made like a little investor presentation for it. I forgot how I even set it out. I might have put it on a LoopNet or something like that at the time. But basically, I sent it out and I said, hey, if anybody wants this, here's the price I'm asking. And somebody took it off my hands for like, I think I only made like $1,800 on it, but it was like in 2 days, which at that time was a big deal to me. And I remember going to him and saying like, hey, man, like that wholesale thing you told me to do really works. I wish I would have done that on these other ones and then use that money to fund these ones. And he was kind of like, dude, I've been trying to tell you this. So that same day, another person wrote to me and said, hey, I want that deal too. And I remember freaking out and being like, oh my God, like I didn't take it offline. Am I going to go to jail? Is this illegal? Is it false advertising? Like, what did I do? And he was like, dude, you've been putting out offers on the same type of property in the same type of area. So you have a little bit of a cookie cutter niche here that's repeatable. So the guy's looking for the same types of properties that you're buying. So just ask him if this is exactly what he wants and get it for him. So at that point, I went and I was like, hey, is this the exact type of deal you want? He was like, yeah. So like same area, same size, same type of rent, same type of demographic, same type of neighborhood. So I called all the realtors I had offers out on, and I forget what the exact numbers are, but I was something like, hey, all those offers I have out, just resubmit all those offers at $115,000 and see if we get any of them. And we did. And I knew that this guy was willing to pay $125,000 for that home. So I already knew anything below that was the money that I got. So I wrote to him and I was like, hey, here's the deal. Same thing, send me 10 grand. So we did. And I was like, that was so much easier asking this person what he wanted and then going out and getting it. And I think like now I've heard the term coined as reverse wholesaling, but that really clicked with me right from the beginning. And that's what I do on the multifamily side now too. So that taught me a lot of, there's so many questions on, is this a deal? Is anybody going to want the deal? How do I know if it's a good deal? Like, and there's all these things that you worry about, but if you just get something and you shoot it out there and you send it out to as many people as you can, you get in front of as many people as you can, and then you get the feedback, you'll find people in that group, even if they don't take that deal, that will educate you on why it's not a good deal, what is a good deal, what they're looking for. And there's going to be people that separate from that crowd as the serious investors that are going to take stuff if it hits their criteria, and you just focus on those and just get them what they want. And anything below what they want is profit for you. So it becomes easier to to scale up and figure out how much profits in it. So that's probably a very long answer to the question. Sorry.
No, that's great. That's fantastic. I think you said a lot of good stuff there. And just to kind of speak to the reverse wholesaling thing, I didn't know it was called that, but that's what I've done. I've just started getting into this stuff probably close to 7 months now. And first deal closed about a month ago, and then second deal closed yesterday, and then I have one closing on Friday. But I didn't know it was called reverse wholesaling, but I met an investor in Arizona that buys in Indiana. And I was just started sending him properties, and I found out exactly what he likes. And so now it's like, I know what to look for, and I'm not worried if it's going to be a deal or not, because I already found the end buyer. But that's probably not as common, right? Would you say most wholesalers are just finding deals and sending it out to everybody?
Yeah, I'm finding more of that actually, that it's less about, they have their kind of key buyers that they know, but that comes from just kind of blasting it out. And then you get one guy who's buying 3, 4, or 5, and that becomes like their VIP buyer. But yeah, I hear a lot less of zeroing in on that, which, especially again, when I go to the commercial side, it becomes a lot more important to narrow that down because it takes so much more time and digging and effort. But I also think like somewhat on the single family side, there's just it's so much easier now too. Like I didn't have Facebook groups then and all these tools and social media and all this stuff. So you really like if you got a fish on the hook, you had to really like call them and keep the communication with them because you couldn't just post a property or pay a VA $7 to blast it online and literally have it in front of 600,000 people. So I can understand why it's done a little bit more that way on the residential side right now, just because there's so many buyers. But I still think it's a great skill to learn, especially starting out. It takes a lot of the fear and the guesswork out of it.
Mm-hmm. One of the things you mentioned that I think speaks to a lot of people is you can buy a property with zero credit, no money down, all that stuff that people don't necessarily think of when they hear real estate investing. The typical thought process, or like the traditional way maybe, is like save up enough money for a down payment and then go get a loan, and that's how you buy a house and you live in it for 60 years and you retire and pay off your house. How can you explain your, like, maybe your subject to deal or creative finance that you've been able to do?
Sure. So, I think a misconception in most deals is that when people hear you're getting into a deal for no money down, they think that there's no money that changes hands. And that's like no money down is normally just not your money down. So because you don't have money, it doesn't mean that you still have to have access to money in a lot of these cases. So, those deals a lot of the times, like especially like on the commercial side or some of those single family side, you'd get in and there'd be a small percentage that the hard money lender still wanted. So like, let's say just for easy math, they're going to lend you on $100,000 property, and they tell you, we're going to give you 85% loan to value. So they're going to give you $85,000 of the $100,000 that you need on a property that maybe the ARV is worth like 200,000. So now there's like a $15,000 cushion of money that I would need to put up out of my own pocket. So how do you do that? So one way you can do it now is you wholesale a property where you again, like I'm sure you've talked about it a million times, but you're never actually taking it. You're finding a buyer. That buyer is going to take it, like the deal I just talked about. The guy sends me 10 grand. Now I have 10 grand. What do I want to do with it? Do I want to go blow it at a club, or do I want to put that on a down payment for, that might get me exactly what I need with a hard money lender, that I can now put that $10,000 down. That technically wasn't my money. It was profit off of a deal that I created out of thin air. So technically that's like an infinite return. Or like on the commercial side, again, if I didn't have it, you have private investors that you can raise that money, and you can bring in a partner, whether it's an equity partner or a debt partner, and they can lend you the 10, 15, 50, whatever it is that you need to put that deal in. And now again, it's none of your own money. You just basically put those people in those places. And then on the subject to deal, it was a little bit different. So the situation was there was a couple that had recently been separated. So they were going through a divorce. They were going through a hardship. I started talking to him about the deal. She basically called me and said, hey, I just need out of this. I'm going through a stressful time. I have some family issues. I let them stay in the house. They trashed the place. I shut the utilities off, like just take it. So I was like, okay. So I looked a little bit, looked a little around on it. And I saw that the value was probably like 275, 280 fixed up. The house needed a little bit of work, but not like a ton. It had a great layout. It was a good area. Not too bad. And then I started to look at what her loan was. So her loan payments were actually kind of high because she had a PMI on it, but they're like $1,750. So when we looked at the area rents, I have a tenant that's already committed to renting this at $2,475. So what she agreed to do, I was like, look, I could buy this and close on it and do the whole fix and flip thing. But at the end of the day, like I just found out you're $8,000 behind on your mortgage. So I'm going to have to look at that. And you haven't paid it in like 3 or 4 months. So we're almost in a pre-foreclosure situation. Your utilities need to be turned back on. I'm going to have to go, clean out the rugs, paint the place, clean all the crap out, do X, Y, and Z. So the numbers don't make as much sense for me to take it, buy it, flip it. It just doesn't make sense. But I do still want to help you out. So why don't we do this? And I'll take over the property subject to your existing mortgage, to your existing loan. And you're just basically out of it. I take everything over. I'll go and I'll fix it up. I'll rent it out and I'll take care of all the liability, all the responsibility. Worst case scenario, I stop paying. The loan servicing company gives it back to you. I've already caught up your mortgage. I've already fixed up your house. And you could just literally take over the payments from the tenant if you really needed to. And here's my performance fee clause that says if I don't pay, you take it back. Like you're pretty protected. You almost want me to default on it in your situation. Best case scenario, it's off your book. So that's kind of what happened is she signed it over and just, her and her husband had to sign over saying, yes, we obviously I had an attorney involved that drew up all the documents, all the disclosures. And basically now I get to just take over that existing mortgage at $1,750 a month. I put a tenant in place at $2,475 a month. And I'm still negotiating with the bank on what we're going to do with the past due balance. But even if I had to pay the $8,000, I could technically just borrow it from somebody if I really needed to, and I could dispo it as like a seller finance or a wrap. I have it so I could put it in. I can renegotiate it back into the loan, or do some sort of a combination of that. But either way, even if I did have to pay the $8,000, now I'm into the property for $220. And it's worth $275, $280, and it's cash flowing. And we're going to reassess the taxes after we get it because they raised it and they shouldn't have. So it'll probably cash for like $800 or $900 a month. And I basically spent $8,000 to buy like $55,000 worth of equity. I keep it in my portfolio. You get a few of those, and in 5, 6, 7, 8 years, as that gets paid down by the tenant and the appreciation starts to go up, that becomes a nice little retirement plan.
Yeah, that it almost seems like, I don't know what the word is, but that's such a cool opportunity you can just create if you know how to do the business. If you know about these different things like subject to and being creative with it. And that's something that you can do tomorrow, right? Like that's how I wonder, like, if you were to ask someone, like, how much would $900 a month extra change the way you currently live? Like, that's a huge thing. And that's one deal. Like you're saying, in 5 years, if you add a few of those to your portfolio, that can completely change everything. And that's kind of the part of real estate that gets me so excited, is that there's just so many opportunities like that if you're looking in the right places. So that's really cool. Have you been doing creative finance for a while, or when did you start picking up that?
Well, I mean, the first few deals I did were creative finance because it was negotiating cash back at closing. Then they kind of shut the door on that. So I had to get a little bit different. And then it became creative finance as far as getting creative with the partners and the way to get the deals put together. And then the sub two stuff, the commercial deals were really where I did more of it. Whereas you would get the seller to carry the note on the wrap. So they would basically seller finance 90% at a higher interest rate than the current mortgage was. So they make it a little cash flow. They have some protection. And then I bring in private money for the down payment and the rehab to stabilize that asset. So it's a very similar premise that you would use on single family. And the reason I started looking more into it now, because normally I would have just wholesaled it or just wholetailed it, since the market's so freaking hot right now. Like we just did when we made like 130 grand on like 3 weeks for doing nothing to it. It was crazy. But I have a property in Georgia that I bought years ago, and it's like you were saying about the $900 a month sounds nice, but you start to get into stuff and it almost goes, well, 400 or 500 a month, what's that really going to do? But when I look at one of the rentals that I picked up in Georgia at the time, I used a credit partner, so he took the loan out. I did everything. I bought him out since then, so he's out of there. But we bought it for like, I don't know, 30 grand, put a little bit of money into it, and it's been cash flowing. It's been occupied since like 2010 or whatever it is, but not bringing in like a ton of money, just a few $100. But what happened is now it's almost paid off and it's worth $155,000. And I got an offer sight unseen from like one of those offer pad type of places for that. So it's like, okay, if you look at it, I wish I had 10 more of those, because all of a sudden now a pandemic hits and you're in like the coronavirus and you lose your job or whatever it is. And now you have 5 or 10 of those that were paying you a few $100 a month, but now they've had pay downs and appreciation, and you could literally sell them all in the open market if you wanted to and make $100,000 on each of those. And you're sitting on $1 million. That solves you a lot of problems and lets you figure out what the next thing is. So that's kind of where now refocusing on the creative side. I'm looking at if I can pick up just 10 of those in the next 3 months and I just put them on the side and I forget about them for the next 5 or 10 years, that's just a retirement plan for the next 10 years when who knows what happens, whether it's, failed banks or a pandemic or whatever it is. The cash flow monthly isn't really what excites me. It's the growth over 5 or 10 years that's going to create the retirement plan later on that I could turn around and sell or finance those to people if the market's in the toilet, or if the market's up, I could just sell it off at the top of the market again. And it kind of hits that fine point, whereas like that 10, 15 years when the house starts to really need some repairs, I don't have to deal with it. I'm kind of getting at it just the right time.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. There's a lot more ways to save for retirement than just your work's 401k.
Oh, yeah.
To me, it seems like real estate's the best way. Would you agree with that, or?
1,000% I would agree with it. I mean, all the guys that I've known, because the good and the bad is I've been investing since before the first crash, and now this is kind of a second crash as far as just the economy, maybe not as far as much as real estate. But the guys that I see that don't stress out, that are walking around, still going out to dinners, going on vacations, not freaking out about where their money's going to come from, is the guy that held it long term. So the ones that I know that were making amazing money at their jobs, they're still downsizing. They're still worrying about layoffs. They still are freaking out about commuting back and forth to the office because they're scared of COVID, or they're mad that now they can't go because of COVID. And, the guys that just held on to those single family portfolios or held on to a couple of small apartment buildings, they're pulling $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 tax-free cash out of 1 or 2 buildings right now. They're good, man. Life is good right now. So I've been big on going back to kind of buying and holding, because I've been selling everything for the last few years, and now I'm kind of looking to mix and match a little bit of both.
Yeah, that's really cool. With the market, like you were saying, is so hot right now. How do you analyze deals? It seems like people are getting on the side where they're almost like expecting it to go up, so they buy it, lock it up at an even higher price, anticipating that it's going to go 50,000 over asking. Are you able to take some of that risk on a deal like that? Or are you analyzing and just sticking to the numbers? How do you buy deals right now in a hot market?
I do not. I've never liked investing for appreciation. I mean, I saw that's how everybody got beat up in the last recession, was you just think it's going to go up forever, go up forever, go up forever. I don't think we're in a position that it's going to go really down anytime soon. There might be a little bit of fluctuation when evictions start and foreclosures start again. But I think because the prices of houses continue to go up and the wages don't, and like more and more people, there's for hiring signs and help wanted signs everywhere, and most of the guys that I know are having a lot of trouble hiring. Like nobody wants to work. So I put a property on the market the first day. I didn't get a ton of bites, and I was like, let me see how it is for a rental. We had like 60 applications in like the first 2 days. Like I'm still getting them. We have to turn them down. So the rental market is like red hot, because people are like paying over and over. We're getting multiple offer situations. So when I look at stuff, I look at it as, what's my best and worst case scenario? And if I see some pending comps or some things that look like they could sell a little bit higher and they're comparable, it's good to look at it and say, I do have a potential upside. But I like more looking at the downside and saying like, okay, this is what it's worth today. When we close on this and fix it up and get it back on the market in 30 days, 60 days, realistically, if it sells at this or a little bit lower, like where's my lowest comp? What's my worst case scenario? Am I still okay that I'm going to break even at that point? I don't want to lose money. But if I look at a situation and I say, I can handle the downside of this and break even and not have to pay anything, I'll take that risk. And if it has an upside potential, then I'm even more inclined to go do that. And that's kind of what's been happening, but I won't plan on that, because you never know, 30, 60, 90 days from now, what's going to happen, where that comp actually sold, what's going to happen in your market, who knows what's going on. So I really try not to do that. I think that's where a lot of people are going to get in trouble, is planning on the blue sky that's always going to keep coming, because there's always a day that it rains. And I don't want to be stuck wishing that I hadn't done that. I always want to be conservative on all my deals and plan for the worst, but hope for the best.
Right. And that sounds like all great, and people listening are like, oh yeah, that's what I would do. But if there's a deal that comes across where there's like a chance that you could make 20 grand, sometimes sticking to the number means you don't take that deal, right? So it takes some discipline and just sticking to your numbers and not really being affected emotionally by the process. So that's good. That's how, like you were saying, that's how the guys are able to make it for the long haul.
Yeah, knowing what deals to pass on is often more important than knowing what ones to buy. Saying no has been so huge, knowing that, and there's times that we'll have those conversations and I do get emotional about it. It's good to have an accountability partner to tell you like, hey, you're getting emotional. Like, look what's happening here. And there's times that the numbers made sense and we passed on deals because the neighbor was a pain in the ass. And we just did, like, who knows what she's going to do? She's going to be there all the time. She's going to drive the contractors nuts. Like, this is going to be a headache. So even though it might make us money, do you have the time every day to take out of what you're doing to go deal with putting out the fire of the obnoxious neighbor? And it was like, you're right. I don't. The headache on that is not worth the money that we would make. So you always have to weigh that out too. Like, how much brain damage is it going to give you on top of how much money is potentially on the line? And all that goes into the factor, because if you're out there taking care of something that's like $1 per hour thing or something you shouldn't have to deal with, it's taking you away from looking at what the next opportunity could be.
Yeah, that's great. Well, one of the questions I always like to ask people that have been doing it for a while is how long does it take someone with no money, no credit, and no resources or all that good stuff to become financially free in real estate? I always like to hear that answer because I think you would know at this point when in your business. What do you think is how long?
Well, I would say financially free is a little bit of a
Subjective, yeah.
yeah, because my whole goal was always, what would I have made as a police officer? Am I making that now? And even if that's all I'm making, and I don't wind up making like 6-figure paydays and all that stuff, I always looked at it as a quality of life thing for me. It was, if I can make the same amount of money like I was going to work every day, but I could actually stay home, go to jujitsu, hang out with my dog, and I worked for myself, my quality of life is way better. I don't have to be in New York City traffic. I'm not stuck in the Bell Parkway every day. So for me, that number was very low starting out. Like, for me to make $50,000-$60,000 a year at 2005, 2006 was already more than I would have made as a New York City Police Department police officer. So, like, to me, that would have been financially free. And obviously, as you start to make that, now you're looking at more and more things. But financially free to somebody who maybe is working in tech and they're making $250,000 a year and they have health benefits and 3 kids, I mean, that becomes another problem. So I would always say, look at it as, like, how can you replace at least your expenses for a year? And when you can have that and put that on the sidelines, if you're going, okay, I part-time was able to supplement everything I needed to live off of for a year. Now I'm willing to do this full-time shit because I could at least be able to double that the second year. Because statistically, you'll do more. You'll double that effort with half the energy, and then you'll double that effort with half the energy. And it becomes a little bit easier and a little bit easier. So it also depends on the person, man. I know people that come in and they kick ass and they take names and they're making 200 calls a day and they're at every meetup and they're on every Facebook group and they're calling you all the time and they're listening to podcasts all day. And then you have other people that are taking a webinar for 1 hour a week and they're watching Netflix the rest of the week. So I think it is a little bit of a loaded question, as far as it's going to depend on the workload of the person, and it's going to depend on what that person needs to actually be financially free. But I think if somebody's willing to put their efforts in full time and they're willing to be coached and open, there's no reason you shouldn't be able to close a couple of wholesale deals in your first 30 to 60 days, which you could make, 5, 10, 15. I've made up to $150,000 on a wholesale deal. So there's a buyer out for every deal, and whatever that is, I mean, that could be, somebody can do that in their first 30, 60 days, and that's all they need to do for the whole year. So, but I tell everybody, give it a year. Just commit to a year. And if it happens in a month, if it happens in 2 months, great. But I want you to plan on the worst case scenario, so that way you won't get discouraged. But if you start to prep yourself that I'm going to bust my ass for 90 days and be financially free, the fallout and the disappointment, or it's going to be a harder expectation to hold.
Right. I think that's awesome. That's a great answer. And I ask it because a lot of times the lower end of your answer is something that would just that blows people's mind. It's like, okay, 1 year. Because I don't understand, when you first said, you said 50,000 was your first year?
No, I was saying my goal was, like, if I would have made 50,000 as a police officer, and that's all I made in real estate that year, and it was the same amount I would have made at a $50,000 full-time job, I feel like I'm financially free because I made from home what I would have made going to work without having to go to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, got it. Well, yeah, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that it's like so possible to just drastically change your situation. And, like, say 10 years, if you're 30 years old, if you can do that in 10 years where you get to not work at a job that you hate working at, as opposed to retiring at 65, like, to me, that's at least worth looking into. And for me, what I've found is I even find the boring stuff exciting, like the cold calling and the chopping wood and carrying water, that is like the hard work. To, like, if you can find that enjoyment in that, that's just like a plus on top of it right there. So yeah, to me, I just think real estate's the coolest thing because there's just so many opportunities, and you can really do it in a fairly quick amount of time if you put your mind to it. So I think you're a great example of that. If you're, and you were able to pay for some mentorships and things as well. So that definitely helps, I think. But
Oh yeah, for sure.
um, kind of just getting into like your lifestyle, because you work for yourself, and you obviously probably have a lot to do, even probably more so than when you didn't work for yourself, because you're ambitious and you're taking on so many tasks. How do you manage your day, and what does a successful day look like for you? Do you have a routine? And you said you do jujitsu. Is that a big part of your day?
Yeah, I mean, things are obviously a little bit different with this whole, Corona stuff and the lockdown. So things have shifted around a little bit. But standardly, what I would normally try and do is just I've learned to post three big things for the day. Like, what are my three big priorities for the day? And I do my best to get those done early. I go back and forth. I've been experimenting with it a little bit over the course of the last like 6 months, depending on how my energy is. But I generally try and get up by like 4:30, 5 o'clock, and I'll either go work out right away. In a perfect world, I go to jujitsu. I take a private jujitsu in the morning, get that out of the way, come home, go for a run, take a shower, read. I try and read 10 pages a day, and then sit down and really start to dig into the work. And then I switch that up. There's other days that I feel like I wake up, I go to jujitsu, I run, I work out, I'll go to the gym or whatever, but I'll be thinking about work while I'm there. So I'm like, crap, like I'm not really enjoying or present in this because I know I still have to do X, Y, and Z. So I played around a little bit too with waking up at like 5 o'clock, reading 10 pages, and then knocking out work until like 8 or 9 and then doing stuff. So it really kind of depends on how backed up I get. But generally that's what I do is I got it from Gary Boomershine. He talks about taking like 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. for yourself. Whatever it is you want to do for that, like that's your time. Those are your hours. And then from 10 o'clock to the rest of the day, it's knocking out that list. It's catching up on stuff. But for me, since I'm in the middle of like doing the podcast and, I have all these different deals in the fire and all kinds of different things going on, stuff pops up throughout the day that like you think it's just going to be, okay, I'm going to post this, I'm going to call this person, I'm going to look at this deal. And now you have like X, Y, and Z popping up that, this person didn't sign that. So it becomes a lot of just trying to manage people's personalities and manage things. So I basically just kind of sit here, and the beautiful part is now, I don't know if you can see that, but you can do everything from your phone, so it really doesn't matter. I can go out to eat. I can go run. I like to make calls with like, especially it's the summer now. So like I'll go out in the morning knowing I have like a couple of hours worth of calls to make, and I'll just go walk around the town with the earbuds in, and I'll track how many miles, I'm knocking out like 10, 15 miles someday, just knocking out phone calls that if I was home, I try and get out as much because I don't want to be tempted to put the TV on. But yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a mixed answer, but generally I either take 5 to 8 a.m. to like hyper focus on exercise, or 5 to 8 a.m. to hyper focus on work tasks that are like the most important things of the day. And then I let the rest of the day just kind of slide. Sundays is really like my podcast day. I try and edit the podcast, do all the notes, take all the clips, send them out to my guy, look at who I need to schedule, who I need to follow up with. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. The rest of the week just becomes a balancing act of, there's days that I literally don't have anything to do. Like the phone doesn't ring, I have no issues. And then there's days that the sky is falling and everybody needs everything yesterday. So I think that's kind of like the entrepreneur balance is you never really know what's going to happen. So you have to be a little bit on your toes every day and prepared to adapt and adjust a little bit. But thankfully with your cell phone now and your laptop, you take them anywhere. It doesn't matter where I am. I can pull it out and within 10 or 15 minutes, jump on a Zoom with somebody, have them FaceTime me from the property or get on a phone call, and we're all good.
Yeah, that's really so cool. And I think even the last year with the pandemic and everyone having to work from home, it's kind of brought to light how much really can be done. I think people even in real estate aren't wanting to, be in person as much, and closings online, and kind of that sort of stuff. Has that played a big effect in your business? Do you feel like because of that, you can do a lot more things remotely?
Not really. It's kind of crazy because I was the guy forever that was always pushing remote, remote, remote. I've mentored, I don't even know how many people and spoken as keynote speakers at like real estate conferences for the last like 9, 10 years. And I'm always talking about, hey, I lived in New York and I bought properties in Vegas and Michigan and Georgia. And here's how I did it before there was like Google Maps and you could do satellite views and drive down the streets and all this stuff. You find ways to make it work. And so I've always done that just because coming from New York and trying to invest in New York and New York City, it was really challenging. So I had to find ways to do things remotely. So I've always done that. I've never had any issues with it. But now I think more people understand it. Like up until like even right before COVID, people were still like, I can only invest in my backyard. I can only invest in my backyard. I can only go see property or invest in properties that I can go see every day. And now you realize that, Zoom, you can do anything. You can see anything. All the information that you need to make a logical, rational decision on your business, you can do visually and virtually every single day. It's just an emotional response thinking that you need to physically be there to go see it and do it.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, I don't know hardly anything. You probably know more in your pinky toe than I have learned this far. But I've done. So I live in Arizona, and I've done 3 deals now in Indiana, which is that just blows my mind. Like, how is that possible?
Oh,
But
that's awesome, man. But it's like you said, Indy for a long time has been a very desirable market for people that can't cash flow in their markets. So that was part of like the same thing we started doing is you find somebody that lives in California, or lives in Arizona, lives in Chicago, lives in New York, and they're like, I can't cash flow. Houses here are $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, and like it doesn't cover the debt. And you go, well, I can get you, 4 or 5 houses for that same price in this market. And look what the cash flow is, and look how it's growing. And they're about to have the Super Bowl there, and look at downtown. And they're like, well, crap, I'll take the equity out of my house here. Like I get calls all the time from people that are liquidating their California properties, or they have stuff in Austin, Texas. And they go, look, I got a bunch of houses. The equity is awesome, but what am I doing with the equity? I can't do anything with it. Let me pull it out and reinvest it in a better market like in Indiana that I can get better cash flow and better returns. And I think that's a great strategy.
yeah. So what are the pieces that are in your operation as far as out of state investing? Do you have boots on the ground over there? Are you just working with a realtor? Like, how does that work? Who are the team members, like, if you would call it that?
So it depends on what asset class we're talking about. There's a little bit more involvement when we're doing commercial stuff, but I always find a boots on the ground person. It's usually not me, but I always do have to find somebody. So when I tell people I never go see the property, I don't see it, taste it, touch it, smell it, or any of those things, somebody does. And I have to be in contact with that person. So I've been very good over the years at figuring out how to just find key players to go and give me the information. So the nice part about the seat that I sit in is that after all this time and all these years and all the things I've done right and all the things I've done wrong to learn what to do and what not to do, I don't need people there that are experts on that market. I just need people that can give me the information that I need, whether that's going to do a video walkthrough or going to get pictures or going to pull public data or, contractors to go send me stuff. And then I'm taking the information that they're getting and I'm just analyzing it and I'm coming up with the decision. So I think the problem is when people think that they're going to go do stuff remotely, they're relying on the people that are in those markets to be the experts. They're not the experts. They're just the hunters and gatherers of the information. You're the expert. You're the decision maker. So, if it's a residential one, obviously I am going to call some realtors because I'm going to be looking for somebody to potentially resell it at the end. So I want their opinion on like, what do you think about this area? Is there any reason I shouldn't be investing in this area? What do you think about the comps? Because this is what I found. What do you think you would resell it for? How long do you think it'll happen? And then I ask them to prove that stuff, So if they're telling me, look, 2-bed, 1-bath are flying off the shelves and they sell in 30 days, I go, awesome, send me that information. And if they send me all the comps that sent in the last 6 months and there's no 2-bed, 1-bath comps, there's nothing that sold within that area in the last 6 months, everything was like price drop, price drop, price drop. I'm going, look, it's just, you can get that information to prove or disprove anything, and then you just adjust. Okay, maybe this isn't the property I want, but now I have a relationship with 3 or 4 or 5 realtors that I called, or 3 or 4 or 5 property managers that I called about that. And I go, cool. Well, now you kind of know what I'm looking for and what I'm not. Let's find something. So that initial conversation opens up your team to figure out who's going to be the ones that are willing to work with you, who's going to go to the property, who's going to be responsive. If those numbers check out, now I'm going to send somebody in. I'm going to send in a few contractors to do walkthroughs. I'm going to get somebody off of Craigslist or off of Thumbtack to do a walkthrough with me. So I'll literally jump on a Zoom and I'll say, look, you're going to call in on my Zoom and we're going to film stuff and I'm going to talk you through it. And so I'll just record something like this and I'll say, okay, I know what I see from the pictures, but I want to actually be walked through the house and I want to record it. So, hey, go over there in that corner. What is that? Is that mold? Is that a water leak? Open up those cabinets, see if they're swinging, go to the doors opening and closing, hit that light switch, see if the light's opening on and off. Okay, is there, so you're able to walk them through and I'm guiding them on what I want them to do. And then they're just sending me the video and I can play it back as much as I want. And then I can go over it now and say, all right, contractor, I need this wall taken out. I need this opened up. I need this moved, get rid of these cabinets, save that door, paint this, trash this, move this. And then I can just put that in a Dropbox folder and send it out to 5 or 10 guys and say, hey, come back. Let me know. What do you think you should do? Do you need to go see it? Where are you even at? So a lot of them will look at it and say, I won't even go to that area, or I can't do that for less than $80,000. And I'm like, cool. you're out. Now I'm down to my 2 or 3 people that are good. So I'll have them go on. I'll have a home inspection done before it goes in. And I'll usually use what's called an OSHI certified inspector because they're very, very diligent. And then I'll potentially use that inspector as a project manager if I'm going to rehab that property. So now not only do I have a realtor that's constantly checking in on that project if we decide to buy it and it passed all the due diligence tests, but then I have my contractor in there that's working on it every day, babysitting the subcontractors. And now I have my project overseer, as we call them, that's going to go once a week whenever I need to get paid. So if my realtor goes, this is going to help with resale if you go with these colors and these cabinets, and here's some comps you can model it after. And then the contractor says, hey, Nick, I finished all the drywall, all the paint, and all the trim. I want to get paid. I'm going to say, awesome. Send me all the pictures, send me the videos, and then send me the punch list with everything checked off. He sends it over. Now I send in my other guy, and that guy goes there and actually looks and goes, I'm going to knock on the drywall and make sure it's going to pass code. I'm going to pull on the door and pull on the window and make sure you didn't do a shoddy job. So the inspector is going to check it for quality and check it for safety to make sure it looks good and it's going to pass inspection. And if it doesn't, they don't get paid. If they don't like that, I'll find somebody else. So that really helps start to get you through that of just having people who have a vested interest in the checks and balances of that going through. And now, on obviously if it's a rental, now you're looking more at bringing in property managers to look at the rental areas, get their feel for, is there a high turnover rate? A lot of the times I'll call the local police precinct to see how many calls they're getting on that block or that area or that neighborhood or that house, because you don't want them to say, oh yeah, I know that house very well. We're there twice a day, kicking people out, arresting hookers and drug dealers. Like, that's not where I want to be. So I'm very big on trying to use those boots on the ground, because you'll be surprised, especially when you set it up as this is not the only deal we're going to do. Like, we're opening up this market. I've done real estate in a lot of other places. Now I'm looking to do a lot more here, and I want to do it with you. So let's find the right ones. Most of the time, you're not going to get the person who's trying to just make a quick buck on you. You're going to get the person who says, look, I live here. I've been around here forever. This is the meth block. You don't want to invest on the meth block. Like, they'll tell you this is a block from the liquor store. There's a fence. I've had so many super specific things that I didn't catch from the realtor that the home inspector or the appraiser or the contractor or the property manager comes through and says, you don't want this. Let's find something else. And we do. So it's just a matter of getting that feedback. And like you said, not being emotional, but I get a lot of pictures. I get a lot of videos. I have conversations, and I act like I don't know anything. Okay, hey, you're the expert. You tell me everything. And a lot of the times it's stuff I already know the answers to, but I want to see how they're going to react. Are they going to tell me the truth? Are they going to justify it? Are they lying to me? Are they just saying what they think I want to hear? Are they making stuff up because they don't really know what they're supposed to say? So I pay attention to a lot of those things, and I set them up for success, and I let them give me feedback. But at the end of the day, everything has to be proven with data. I'm not just going to take somebody's opinion on something. And with comps or construction budgets or home inspections or, just as simple as CMA will tell you if you're on the right track or not.
Yeah, that's really good. That's a very thorough process, and it makes sense because you've been able to repeat it and do it so long. How long did it take you to figure out all those pieces? Did you have to learn that on your own? Was there someone else that was like, hey, make sure you do this? Or were you like stumbling into mistakes that taught you? How did that look like for you?
Yeah, I would say, because again, it wasn't really that the people I was learning from at the time that were teaching me how to invest remotely, a lot of them lived in those markets and they had moved from other markets and set up team. So I didn't get a lot of help. A lot of it was trial and error and learning like different ways to get better communication. And I'd say that's the biggest thing I learned over that time, was just that if you're gonna do anything, communication is huge, whether it's life or business, but especially remote real estate investing, constant communication is super important. And I learned that me being immature or not ready for business or relationships like that, being a leader, being a business owner, I would start to avoid conversations because I didn't want to hear bad news. I didn't want to see that the contractor didn't do his job that day. I didn't want to hear from the realtor that the numbers really weren't going to check out. So I subconsciously got emotional, and I think I shut off that communication or avoided communication or pictures or information that I didn't want to see. So that's kind of the opposite now. It's like now if it's not a deal and it's not going to work, I want to know right away so I can go on to the next thing. And I want the good news or the bad news, but I want it quick. And I try and work and know what works for me. And I know what works for me is if you pick up the phone, like a great example is the management company. When you're doing buy and holds, especially in like apartment buildings and things like that, you could be all of a sudden something that seems like a small deal on a single family home. You now have that times 40, 50, or 60 on a multifamily building. So that small problem is a massive problem, which sometimes can turn into, 30, 40, $50,000 a week mistake. It gets crazy fast. So it's even more important to have those habits. So I'll tell her, like, look, every day when you go into that property, you need to FaceTime me when you go in, so I know that you're there. And then you need to show me the 3 things that you're going to focus on that day. And then I need an update at the end of the day, just another 2-minute FaceTime saying, here's what I did. I'm clocking out for the day. If she can't or he can't do that, they're not my person. So it's a lot of setting up an expectation ahead of time of saying, here's how I'm going to need it done. Here's what I'm going to need from you. If you can't work with the way that I work, you might be the best contractor in the entire state of Indiana. But if you're on a flip phone and you don't know how to send me videos and use Dropbox and do that stuff, you're not the person for me. Like, unfortunately, we're not going to work well together because you're not going to be able to get me the information I need. And that's okay. I use this example a lot that I say, everybody has somebody in their life that they absolutely cannot stand the sight of. They can't stand their voice. They don't like being there. And then you find out that person that you literally can't stand being around is married to somebody else. And that person loves that person. They couldn't imagine being away from them for a single second. They want to spend eternity with them. So it doesn't mean that that person's a bad person. It means it's just that they're not the right person for you. And that's the same thing I look at with business. I've learned a lot of the same things that apply in a personal relationship for the most part also apply to a business relationship by setting an expectation and having good, honest communication and setting that up. And I have a 72-hour rule that I've learned from making those mistakes of, I never want to go a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks and going, I wonder how that property's going. I can't go more than 3 days without getting an update from somebody, whether it's pictures or videos. And if somebody is not responding to me within 3 days, I haven't heard back from the contractor, I haven't heard from the property manager, I haven't heard from a project overseer, I'm getting another person, whether it's a brand new realtor, an investor off of a Facebook group, or somebody off of Craigslist, and I'm paying them $20 to go in there and walk through that property and find out what the hell's going on. And again, then I find out, is the guy sleeping and drunk on the job? If he is, he's out. Has he not been picking up the phone because he's been working his ass off there, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, hitting my deadline? We're all good. Just doing a proof of life.
Yeah, that's good. That's awesome. Okay, great. Yeah, that helps a lot. I think there's so many pieces there that it can be almost overwhelming, but if you take it like one piece at a time, like you're saying, where you just focus on this and you're able to be consistent and not get emotional, I think it really puts it in the picture. So yeah, thanks for that answer.
Yeah, and again, it's bite size. I'm not getting all those people in right off the bat. I need one person one day. I work with them for a few days. And a lot of the times that's all I need, because I find out that it's not a deal. And, okay, great, we'll start over again. And now the next time it starts over again, I have that person. So I'm not going crazy spending the day looking for it. You go, okay, I already have Brennan. He's already in Indiana. He's already in Arizona. I'm going to call him. He's my first point of contact. And then from there, okay, now we did get the thumbs up, the green light. Who do we need now? Okay, let's find that person. Let's get them in there. So you form the team as needed. So, and I get that question a lot. People go, do I need to set all this stuff up ahead of time? No, you need to find like the deal first. Find the deal, because when you find the deal, you can build a team around the deal. But without that, you just wasted all this time putting this whole team together and you're not even in the game yet. So it's like, what's the point? So yeah, bite size, don't get overwhelmed, one day at a time.
Mm-hmm. Cool. How have you been able to scale your business? Because I imagine you're not doing like 5 hours of cold calling a day, or how has that progression been for you? Do you hiring people, and how do you know when to do that?
Sure. So I will say that's probably been the bane of my existence over this last year, is just I've been having a lot of trouble, which across the board, a lot of the people I've been talking to are having a lot of trouble keeping good cold callers, good closers. So my cold caller I'm using now is great. They're doing an awesome job. But I do have to monitor that a lot still, because you catch them being lazy, saying stuff they should be over. I'll listen for quality checks and stuff a lot of the time. So I'll jump on, I'll hear the person talking, and I'm like, all right, well, I want to call this lead now because it says that they're a hot lead. Let me listen to the initial call from the cold caller so I know a little bit about what I'm getting into. And I hear her dog barking and sirens going off, and she's yelling at her kid. And so I'll just call the company. I'll say, look, this, I don't know what's going on. Is it maybe that they don't usually work from home, but this is a bad look, let's switch it out. And then, I'll listen to constant recordings. They're always sending me new people. And I try and find people that like sound like they're there or they're in that market. They don't maybe have the thickest accent or they speak good English if I'm calling there, or maybe I need somebody that does speak Spanish because I'm calling those types of areas. So I'm monitoring it for good quality calls that sounds like they're professional. Are they following the script? Are they saying the things they need to say? And I do constantly find stuff that I have to let people go because they're having a bad day or they're discouraged and they're sending leads that shouldn't be leads, or they're saying things that they shouldn't be saying. But that's the first target. We're doing SMS, we're doing cold calling, we're doing online marketing. We're working with a lot of wholesalers as co-wholesalers, a lot of word of mouth stuff, a lot of social media stuff, and just kind of having it all pile in and sort through those leads.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Another piece, or I guess kind of as we wrap things up, someone might be listening to this and thinking it all sounds so cool, but really just has no idea where to start. You've been doing it for like 15 years now, you said. In 2021, what do you think is the best way to start in real estate? And maybe what are those first couple steps someone can take?
I would definitely say the biggest thing would be think about what you want and what you need. So decide, how much money do I need? How much time am I willing to put in? Do I have money I just want to invest passively? If I don't have money, do I need to put time in? And then what's the best strategy for that? A lot of the time, like I tell people on my podcast, call me and let's talk about like how to get you into real estate. And then I just go over all the pros and cons of fix and flips and wholesaling and apartments and mobile home parks or builders or whatever it is. And I go, okay, you need to think about this now and think about like, you do want to flip properties, but do you mind managing contractors? Are you okay with okay, you're great with construction, then fix and flips are probably for you. If not, then maybe wholesaling for you because you don't want to babysit contractors all day. You don't want to make cold calls. So I think a big thing is just understanding what each of those is going to take from a time standpoint, from an energy standpoint, and from a financial standpoint, and then picking a strategy that you're going to stick to for at least the next 6 months, whether that's fix and flipping, wholesaling, multifamily, or just you want to burr and pick up rentals. But I would definitely say starting out, don't try and do everything. Pick one thing, focus on that one thing, learn everything you can about it. Get mentorship if you definitely can. I mean, I know everybody can afford it, but if you can't, there's so much free information on that. And I think the biggest danger is people go, I want to flip, or I want to burr, I want to wholesale. And then they get on podcasts or they get on YouTube and now they're looking at commercial, or they want to, so they get that shiny object syndrome. And I think the biggest favor you can do yourself is to funnel in, have focus on one specific strategy for 6 months, master that strategy, get your team in place, take the aches and pains of growing. And then when you have that going, okay, now I'm going to go into this other thing. Now I'm going to go into this other thing. But there's always going to be a time and a way to make money in real estate. Pick one, focus on one, and then there's always going to be an opportunity. I think that's what happens is people are afraid to pick something because they're afraid they're going to miss all the other opportunities, but there's always going to be another opportunity.
That's great. I couldn't agree more. And then, then like you were saying earlier, it doesn't happen right away. I like that analogy you use with the popcorn is that, it starts and then after 6 months, even maybe a year, and then pop, 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 and you can finally start seeing the momentum and the work you put in paying off. So, definitely something people can work for. I guess the last couple questions I'd like to ask here is because this is the Get Wealth podcast, what's your definition of wealth?
Being able to do what you want when you want.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good answer. Yeah, because I think a lot of people put in their definition like a financial like a number, like this amount or this thing. But if you can, really what that is just allowing you freedom, right? That's kind of what money is just a vehicle for, is that freedom. So
yeah, I think that financial bar always moves. I think that's the problem with it is, what you think is wealth today, when you start to knock out more deals or acquire more properties, the goalpost is going to keep moving, and you could chase that forever, man. Look at Elon Musk, look at Joe Rogan. You know what I mean? Other people go, oh man, if I just had that, but I'm sure he's got that. And now he's like, well, how do I turn that into, 200 million or 3, you know what I mean? So it's never ending. I think finding that balance, because at some point you're going to look back and say, I actually had enough at this one point. I didn't stop and smell the roses or do any of these things because I was chasing the next thing, which I didn't even really care about. It was more for other people. So I think just figuring out, like, at some point you're going to be able to walk around and just say, I don't have to worry about paying my bills. I don't have to look at the dinner price menu anymore. And I get to kind of live all day, take my kids to school, go to jujitsu, kind of do whatever I want. And, to me, that's what it is. That's the goal.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then what's a book you recommend?
Um, what am I reading now? I'm reading Winning Now by Tim Grover. I think that's pretty interesting because it like his thing is like I take Ferraris and I show them how to work even better. So I like the idea of just what is that extra 1%? What are they doing? What are they driving? It motivates me a little bit more. But I do like the book. I think it's called Laws of the Ring by Uriah Faber because he tells a lot of stories that are about mindset shift and just choosing to find the positive and stuff. And to me, that's a huge thing because when you get into real estate, every day is just your phone ringing with problems, but that's really what you signed up for is I want to be a problem solver. So when you learn to look at them and take them on as something that's exciting and you shape your head around it, it lets you thrive in that instead of kind of cowering in it and letting it beat you down. Because if you choose to look at it as all day long, I'm just listening to problems, it can be a long day for you. But if you look at those problems and you learn how to look at them as opportunities, it makes it a lot easier to handle and navigate those waters.
Yeah, that's great. Well, awesome, man. Listen, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast and taking your time. I learned a lot. I know anybody that's listening got a lot from this. So is there the podcast, and I see behind you the A Game podcast. I got a chance to listen to it. Really good. Have some really good guests on there. So definitely go check out that. Are there any other links or things you want to plug?
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. And this was awesome. You're a great host, and I appreciate you reaching out and having me on for sure. I'd like to have you on mine as well. But the easiest way to get it is if you go on nicknicknick.com/links. You'll see all the ways you can listen to the podcast. It's available everywhere, and all the ways to find me on social media are on there as well. And if you go on nicknicknick.com/biggerpockets, there's a free checklist on how to bring more value to your buyers. That's on there too. That's free for anybody that wants to jump there. So that'll kind of take you to everywhere and everything for me on the podcast through that.
Okay, great. And I'll put all that in the description as well. So, all right, I guess that's it then. Nick Lamanga, everybody, get wealthy.
I appreciate it, man. Have a great day.
You too.